Picture this. You show up for your freshman year of college, right? You're expecting to study some coding, maybe hit a few dorm parties, figure out how to do your own laundry. But instead, you end up breaking open one of the absolute biggest scandals in modern academia. Well, today's explainer takes us directly into the heart of Silicon Valley, and we're being guided by Theo Baker's explosive exposé, How to Rule the World. It is just a wildly gripping investigation, entirely spearheaded by a college freshman that completely pulls back the curtain on this elite, hidden pipeline functioning deep inside Stanford University. We're going to look at how a place that's meant for education has, in so many ways, transformed into this high-stakes training ground for future tech oligarchs.
So let's start with a number, $14.3 trillion. That is the combined value of Silicon Valley's public companies. Just to put that into perspective for a second, that is literally more than the gross domestic products of the UK, Germany, and India combined. To really understand Stanford, you absolutely have to understand the sheer gravity of the wealth surrounding it. This massive tech footprint sets the stage for a university operating with a level of wealth and power that is just unprecedented. Because it's not just a school anymore, It's the geographic and intellectual epicenter of a modern gold rush, but a gold rush that is like 200 times larger than the original California one.
And honestly, that massive regional wealth just bleeds directly onto the campus. Let's look at another number, 116. There are actually 116 entire countries on Earth that operate with smaller annual budgets than this single university. I mean, Stanford sits on a staggering $40.8 billion endowment. It's the kind of place where you literally have priceless Rodin sculptures situated right next door to nuclear laboratories. But here's the catch. This massive concentration of capital completely distorts the traditional college experience. It fundamentally changes the university's primary product from, say, academic research into something else entirely. The product becomes the students themselves.
Which brings us to our author, 17. That was Theo Baker's age when he arrived at Stanford, just 17 years old. He showed up as this tech-obsessed coder, totally believing in the power of technology to change the world. But instead of just, burying his head in computer science textbooks for 4 years, the environment he walked into turned him into a relentless investigative journalist. He ended up getting drafted into the student newspaper, the Stanford Daily, and within a matter of months, his reporting would send shockwaves way, way beyond the campus borders.
And all of this brings up a massive, really unsettling question. What exactly happens when the world's most powerful tech incubator is masquerading as a university? See, Baker quickly realized that Stanford evaluates its students way differently than a normal college would. They aren't just viewed as scholars. No, they are treated as high-agency commodities. There's an entire hidden ecosystem that exists purely to identify the next trillion-dollar startup founders from the exact moment they step foot onto campus, giving them resources and access that most seasoned professionals won't even see in a lifetime.
So digging into this, Baker uncovered something he called the plucked. This is basically the secretive Stanford inside Stanford. It's this entirely opaque process where a select few students are just pulled into these hidden networks of power. You've got venture capitalists courting these high-agency freshmen from week one. We're talking pre-idea funding here. You don't even need a business plan. You just need to have the right vibe and get the right introductions. It completely bypasses traditional academic meritocracy, and instead it creates this invisible, highly lucrative fast track for a chosen few.
And if you want to know the philosophy driving this pipeline, it is chillingly clear. Just listen to what billionaire venture capitalist Chamath Palihapitiya said during a lecture right there at Stanford. He stood in front of a room of enraptured students and flat out told them that 150 men run the world, and the ultimate goal? To aggregate enough of the capital of the world to then reallocate it against their worldview. I mean, wow, this isn't about public service or democratizing technology for the masses. It's about grooming teenagers to consolidate immense concentrated power and literally impose their vision on the globe.
Now, having all that immense power creates a bizarre, almost unbelievable double standard on campus. On one side, you have what's known as the administration's war on fun. Normal, everyday college life is heavily sanitized. Want to host a simple dorm party? You're going to need weeks of advance approval, a super detailed harm reduction plan, and mandatory classes. They even ban this traditional Eurotrash party. But right beneath the surface is something completely different. The Koopa Circuit, named after the campus cafe. Down in this hidden reality, certain students have access to corporate slush funds, secret yacht parties, and multi-million-dollar mansions in the hills for their club retreats. The university cracks down hard on typical college socializing while turning a complete blind eye to this venture-backed opulence.
So what does this hidden pipeline actually look like on the ground? Well, it operates through a whole network of covert channels. Take, for example, a literal secret, uncredited class called How to Rule the World. It was taught by a Silicon Valley founder to a hand-picked cohort of students. Or consider TreeHacks. It's this elite coding club armed with what they call black hole budgets that basically acts as a direct talent funnel to VC boards. Beyond that, you have these hidden microgrants being handed out by student gatekeepers. In fact, Baker highlights one of these gatekeepers in the explainer, a 20-year-old campus fixer named Ivan. And Ivan openly admitted, on the record, that he cared far more about sitting on cool corporate boards than, say, curing cancer. It's these young, very well-connected gatekeepers who control the ultimate access to the billionaires.
But here's the thing. There is a massive psychological toll to all of this. When your ultimate goal in life is to become some mythical 10x engineer or the next Mark Zuckerberg, the pressure is just absolutely relentless. And that kind of intense pressure trickles down into a really dangerous campus culture of cutting corners. Baker's sources admitted to doing everything from tax evasion and embezzlement to outright securities fraud. Think about it. When teenagers are handed massive financial resources and the literal promise of ruling the world with almost zero oversight, deceit just becomes another tool in the toolbox for success.
And to really illustrate how deeply broken that lack of oversight was, Baker focused on a campus impostor named Will Curry. Get this high school grad smooth-talked his way into living in 6 different Stanford dorms over the course of a year. He lied about being a neuroscience student, a track star, even a Duke transfer. But the really dark irony here is that when Curry began threatening and stalking a female student, the campus Department of Public Safety largely ignored her pleas for a community alert. So what finally got the imposter removed from campus? He cut a security wire to steal a common room flat-screen TV. The institution totally failed to protect a student's safety, but man, it sprang right into action over a piece of stolen property.
But Baker's reporting didn't just stop with weird campus imposters. No, he escalated his investigation to the absolute highest level of institutional power imaginable, the university's president, Marc Tessier-Lavigne. Now, Tessier-Lavigne wasn't just an administrator. He was a superstar neuroscientist, a wealthy former biotech executive, and even a rumored Nobel Prize contender. But Baker got a tip, and he discovered decades of never-reported allegations regarding manipulated research data in major scientific studies that bore the president's name.
The timeline of this investigation is honestly incredible. Over a window of just 8 months, an 18-year-old student journalist went toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful academic figures in the entire world. From the initial tip in month 1, Baker faced stakeouts, anonymous warning letters, and massive pushback from high-powered PR firms. Key witnesses were gagged by highly restrictive non-disclosure agreements. But Baker didn't flinch. He kept digging into this manipulated Alzheimer's research, and ultimately his relentless reporting forced Stanford to launch an independent investigation, which directly led to Tessier-Lavigne stepping down by month 9.
Now, to really see how institutional power protects itself when it's cornered, a venture capitalist named Brad Feld actually reviewed Stanford's crisis management during this scandal. He noted that they disastrously utilized the classic playbook of power. It's a 4-step process. First, they dismissed the allegations entirely. Then, they delayed the process as long as possible. Next, they brought in aggressive lawyers to discredit the messenger, literally accusing Baker's reporting of being replete with falsehoods. And finally, only at the very end, when the evidence was completely undeniable and they had absolutely no other choice, did they acknowledge what was true. It is basically a masterclass in what a board of directors should absolutely not do.
So how did Baker break through that playbook? Pure relentlessness. 250. That is the staggering volume of interviews he conducted over 3 years to put together this exposé. I mean, he spoke with everyone. He talked to student fixers, hanging out in cafes, Nobel laureates, massive tech CEOs, and even 3 different Stanford presidents. His steadfastness for the truth earned him the historic George Polk Award. That made him the youngest recipient ever, putting his name right alongside legendary journalists like Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. But you know, the aftermath of this whole scandal reveals a really stark, lingering divide. Let's look at the institutional side first. Despite resigning in disgrace over flawed scientific rigor, Tessier-Lavigne quickly rebounded. I mean, shortly after stepping down, he raised $1 billion for a brand new startup. Stanford admitted there were some gaps, but they largely deflected the real blame. Now compare that to the personal side. Yes, Baker won prestigious journalism awards, but he bore a very heavy personal cost. He faced isolation on campus and walked away with a profound disillusionment with the entire tech ecosystem. It just goes to show how the system seamlessly continues to reward the powerful, leaving behind this lingering moral void.
Which brings us right to the end, leaving us with a really provocative thought to chew on. If ruling the world, if gaining access to that $14 trillion ecosystem requires looking the other way at fraud, protecting abusers, and essentially trading your soul for a seat at the table,
Let me ask you, is the price of admission actually worth it? Baker's incredible investigation really forces us to take a hard look at whether this billionaire-backed pipeline is a true meritocracy or if it's simply a Faustian bargain masquerading as higher education. Definitely something to think about the next time you hear a glowing story about the latest Silicon Valley wonderkind, right? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, always remember to keep questioning the systems of power around you.